In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Pope Francis is being quoted as saying that there was no miracle. The people brought food with which they then discovered in their picnic baskets, and so there's a perfectly natural explanation. I hope, my dear friends, you don't believe that. I hope what you believe is our Lord worked a miracle. God is God. Who does Pope Francis take God to be? Does he think God is short of means? Does he think Jesus is not God? Could be. It could be. Has the man still the faith? God knows. God knows. It certainly doesn't look as though he has the faith. But God knows and you and I don't. Maybe he still has the faith, but he certainly doesn't look or talk as though he does. Of course it's a miracle. And in a certain modern revelation, which I'm not the author of which I'm not allowed to quote because people don't accept that it's from heaven. I thoroughly believe it's from heaven. It's very interesting. It's a detailed description of these miracles. And the disciples come up to be given a piece of bread each into a basket. And then when it's in their basket, it begins to multiply, so that they've always got enough to hand out. When they start moving among the crowd, there's always enough to give out. And an interesting little detail in this account, and it's entirely likely, the faster a disciple or an apostle, the faster and the more generously an apostle gave out, the faster his basket refilled. It's very likely. There were those who might have begun by being very careful because it would soon run out by the end of the row. So they're giving out little, but it's still refilling. Those who give out plenty, it refills just as fast, or it refills faster. So there's no lack. There's no lack of generosity on the part of God. Famous saying, Almighty God never allows himself to be outdone in generosity. And it's certainly true. So you and I be generous with God, and he will be generous, more than generous in return. So, of course it's a miracle. Because God creates them. St. Augustine points out, when the wheat grows in the summer, in the fields, each ear of wheat is a miracle. I mean, every plant growing is a miracle. Every child growing in a mother's womb, a human mother's womb, every human child growing in every human's mother is a miracle. The mother's got nothing to do with it. She just eats enough to make sure that she's going to be able to bear a baby. But it's the mechanism. It's not a machine. Human being is not a machine. Almighty God is not a machine. But we talk about the mechanism, the process rather, not mechanism, but the process by which it happens is entirely God's affair. Scripture says, "You fashioned me in my mother's womb," says Scripture. Of course it's God. How can these poor godless people today understand? I mean, how on earth, here's a miracle, how on earth does sap climb up a tree against gravity in the spring? And it's a massive sap that grows up, that drives upwards. How does it drive upwards? Osmosis. Is osmosis enough to pull it higher? They have to give it a name, they have to give it some name. It's obviously a fact. But how? It's a miracle. Against gravity. It's more or less a miracle. So, poor Pope doesn't believe in miracles. Our Lord is careful, our Lord doesn't splash them around. That's not generosity, that would be imprudence, because it would make miracles something common instead of the miraculous that they are. Their value to persuade souls is by their rareness. If they were too common, familiarity would breed contempt, and they would lose their purpose, they would lose their effect, which is to confirm people confirm souls in the faith. Our Lord works miracles, many miracles are worked on bodies, curing of sickness, for instance, or used to be anyway. Now hospitals do a lot of that work. Christian hospitals which began by being Christian and are now all in the hands of the enemies of God, the Freemasons. But the Freemasons took over from Christ by the lack of faith of the people. In any case, God relies on human beings to do their own thinking, and so when medicine was not as advanced as it is today, then there was more need for miracles, and there were many more miracles because people had the faith. But if people have no faith, the miracles are not going to confirm them in the faith. The miracles are not going to serve. The disbelieving scientists are simply going to say, we have no explanation. Well, what is your explanation? We have none. We have none. We explain the things we like to explain or want to explain, and which come under us, which we can dominate. But when things are beyond us, well, we don't acknowledge them. We just don't acknowledge them. They don't exist, or they're of no interest. So scientists can have miracles happen under their nose, and it's of no interest, because it's outside of their domain. They are masters of their own domain, but they pretend that their domain is everything. It's far from everything. But everything is of God's domain. Everything is under God, and God does as He likes. God is God. But He never acts without wisdom. He doesn't act arbitrarily or foolishly, obviously. Everything He does has a very good reason. We can't always see what reason it is, but it has a good reason. But He is the complete master of His creation, the complete and absolute master. So why can't He multiply bread? Of course He can. It's happened down in modern times as well. Does the Pope know nothing of multiplications of bread in modern times? There was Claire Ferscher during the Second World War in France, and she was, I think she looked after the kitchen in a convent, and a number of soldiers came by and were hungry. She multiplied bread for them. Don Bosco multiplied nuts for his children. Saints have leverage on Almighty God. They live so wisely and so in accordance with His will that they do so much what He wants and He does what they want. And when saints ask Him for a miracle, they can obtain it. You and I may not, but saints can. But God is God. Poor Pope. But I was going to say today that I had an interesting quotation from a friend in France who points out the relative unity of the priests at present in the resistance movement. Because the resistance is resisting the falling SSPX. That's the main purpose of existence of the resistance, is to rescue primarily the SSPX, of course also to look after as many other souls as come towards it. Generally, souls need to come towards the resistance, need to be given a grace by God to come towards the resistance. Otherwise it's simply greed. They just don't understand. But if they're given grace, then they understand, they're given light, it's a gift of God, then they can see why the resistance movement is resisting the downfall, mainly the downfall of the SSPX, so that the Society of Pastor can be restored to its former purpose and glory, which was to resist the downfall of the mainstream church, a much bigger affair. But what that means is that there is a parallel. As the society, the Archbishop Society, was resisting the mainstream church, the downfall, the conciliar downfall of the mainstream church, so the resistance movement, or fidelity, if you like to call it that, names don't matter. Shakespeare, a rose by any name would smell as sweet. So resistance or fidelity, you can call it what you like. What matters is the reality. The reality is an attempt to stop not the mainstream church from sliding, but the society from sliding. So, Archbishop to the council is the resistance to the new society. So the society was to the council as the resistance to the new society. The society is trying to stop, with Archbishop Williamson, trying to stop the council going crazy, the followers of the council going crazy. the resistance is trying to stop the members of the society, of the new society, going crazy. So there's a distinct parallel. There's a clear parallel because the error of the new society is exactly the same, basically, as the error of the conciliarists, which is why the new society wants to rejoin the conciliarists, the Roman followers of Vatican II. Now, the desire that everything goes back to Vatican II, you have to keep, in order to keep things straight in your mind, you have to go back to Vatican II, which is where they really began going crazy. What happened at Vatican II? The Catholic Church is truth, and it's also authority. And the authority is to serve the truth. The truth is not to serve the authority. For instance, when in our Lord's Passion, just before the Last Supper, just before he's going to die, he tells Peter, Peter says, I'm going to stand on my steed, I'm not going to abandon you, I won't betray you, Lord, you can count on me. Our Lord says, go easy, dear Peter. I have prayed for you, that Satan may not sift you like wheat, or Satan, I'm sorry, I forget the exact word. Satan has prayed to sift you like wheat, or Satan is going to have prayed for you. I have prayed that your faith fail not. I have prayed for your faith, Peter, and when you convert, when you come back to the faith, when you come back to the truth, then you confirm your brethren. In other words, Peter has got to find his way back to the truth before he can exercise authority over his brethren, because the authority being given him by our Lord, thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will found my church, the authority being given him by our Lord is that he hold his brethren in the faith. The purpose of the Pope is mainly to preserve the faith, because the faith is the truth. And so the purpose of his authority, the purpose of the Pope's authority, the purpose of the Cardinal's authority, the purpose of the Bishop's authority, the purpose of the priest's authority is to confirm souls in the faith so that they may go to heaven. Because they can't go to heaven without the faith. Therefore, to maintain the purity of the faith is the purpose of Catholic authority. So you have Catholic authority, you have Catholic truth. The disaster of Vatican II was that Catholic truth and authority were split by the fault of the authority. It was the church authorities who decided to modernize the church and to change the church. No longer would there be Catholics and pagans who would make the people of God. But the people of God would consist both of the Catholic priests and the Catholic laity and pagans. Everybody would now belong to the new church. Everybody would now belong to the people of God. The people of God used to be Catholics. The people of God is now everybody on earth. It's a total difference. It's a totally different religion. It's the religion of man, so that of course if it's a religion of man, then of course every man belongs to the church. If it's the religion of God, then those who follow God and obey God and believe in God belong to the church, but those who refuse to believe won't belong to the church. It's a totally different idea of the church. It's a totally different religion. That's the council. Therefore the council, the 2,000 bishops and the 2 popes, John the 23rd and Paul the 6th of Vatican II, abandoned the truth, but they were still the authority. Nobody else is the authority of the church. Therefore, Catholic authority was split from Catholic truth. That's the council. Now what happened after the council is the Catholic authority, Paul the 6th especially, used all his authority to make people follow his lies. Lies. Let's use a good, straight, old-fashioned Anglo-Saxon word. Lies. Paul VI was a liar. And he used his authority to make almost all Catholics follow lies. Why did Catholics follow lies? Because he was the authority. They were so used to obeying authority, they had been so trained to obey authority, that they naturally followed authority, and they said, Pope Paul VI knows best. He's trying to adapt religion to the modern world. I realize the modern world is very far away from the church, and he's going to bring the church to the world and the modern world to the church. He's going to save the modern world by bringing the church to it. He's going to save the church by bringing the world to the church. So I'll follow, and many Catholics did. But The Archbishop Lefebvre said no. Authority, the authority of the Pope, the authority of the cardinals, the authority of the bishops of Vatican II was to prolong, to be faithful, to maintain the same true faith. And if I look at what Paul VI says, and I look at what the Catechism of the Council of Trent says, it doesn't match. Paul VI is spilling novelties. He's not being faithful to the truth. And so, as the Archbishop said, as a bishop, I have got to follow the truth, even if the authority says I mustn't. Because the authority exists for the truth, and the truth doesn't exist for the authority. The truth has got to come first. Because if the authority is not serving the truth, what's it going to serve? It's going to serve personal interests. It's going to serve the personal dream of Pope Montini, Pope Paul VI. It's going to serve the personal ambitions of Paul VI, whatever it is. Almighty God knows the secrets of Pope Paul VI souls, we don't know. But whatever it is taking him away from the truth. The Archbishop didn't try to find out what it was. Was it because he was a Freemason? Was it because he was an agent of the KGB? Was it this? Was it that? Was it the other? The Archbishop didn't worry. He simply said, he's not following the truth. I have got to follow the truth. When I go in front of my Maker, I don't want to have him say to me, did you also destroy my church? And the Archbishop was right. Because that's the question that our Lord will be asking the bishops when they come in front of him, the conciliar bishops. So the Archbishop stood for truth, and truth was the strength of the society. The authority of the Archbishop was not all that strong. It wasn't up to normal strength inside the society. He gave that impression, but that's not that he was deliberately trying to deceive. But he was so successful in leading the priests who understood him or were dazzled by him. He was so successful that he gave the impression that he was a normal bishop in charge of a normal congregation, but he wasn't. And it's very simple to show. When a priest, and the Archbishop lost a lot of priests that he had ordained, maybe 1 in 4, I don't know the exact statistic, but it's something like 1 in 4. Of 200 priests that he had ordained, maybe he'd lost 50, either to the sedevacantism on the right or to liberalism on the left, the novice order on the left. In any case, the Archbishop lost a number of priests. He couldn't stop them. In the old days, if a priest wanted to walk away from his bishop, from his diocesan bishop, he walked away, and then he knocked on the door of another diocese to try to get employed in that diocese. Because it was very difficult for priests not to be employed in some diocese. So he quit the diocese he didn't like and went to the second diocese B. Well, of course, when he knocked at the door of Bishop B, of course, the first thing Bishop B did was, come back tomorrow, Father, and I'll talk to you again. And in the afternoon, he rang Bishop A and said, Your Excellency, I've got a certain Father so-and-so knocking at my door, wanting to join my diocese. What do you have to tell me about him, please? And Bishop A said, don't touch him with a barge pole. I know him very well. He's been in this diocese for 10 years. He's been nothing but trouble. He's etc., etc. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. That's all I need to know. The following day, the same priest knocks again at the door of Bishop B, and Bishop B says, dear Father, I'm sorry, I don't have any place for you. You'll have to go somewhere else. And the same thing happened. So there is a network of bishops who all belong to the same official authority of the church, and they all covered one another. They all exercised authority the same way. They protected one another, which is normal. But the Archbishop, if priests wanted to quit the Archbishop, then when he knocked at the door of a diocesan bishop, the diocesan bishop said, yes, Father, where do you come from? I come from Archbishop Lefebvre. Oh, now I know you'll have had a good formation. Have you, and I'll find a place for you in my diocese, because he owed no loyalty to Archbishop Lefebvre at all. On the contrary, Archbishop Lefebvre was pasted and mediatized as an enemy of the mainstream church, and therefore, if a priest came away from Archbishop Lefebvre, he was welcome in the diocese. And if he had a good formation to offer and good experience in the society, then the bishop gladly took him in because he knew he'd be a good priest. He says, he had one question. Father, have you understood that the society is wrong and the mainstream church is right? Oh yes indeed, I have now understood. After 10 years in the society, I've understood that. No problem at all, come in, I've got a job for you. And some of the society priests who joined the novice order have done very well inside the novice order because the Archbishop had given them a good formation. But the Archbishop was powerless to hold it. Therefore, inside the society, the Archbishop's authority he was walking on eggs, and he couldn't necessarily hold everybody together. But those he did hold together were held together mainly by the truth. And the truth was a strong factor of unity inside the society. Because any society priest who did his sums and understood the importance of doctrine and of truth realized that the Archbishop was right and stayed with the Archbishop, not because the Archbishop was exercising over him an eggshell authority, although that authority was useful and it was strong enough to be handed down to the Archbishop's successors, which they have then misused by trying to follow the council. And they're losing their authority by trying to follow the council. And the Archbishop held together, it was the truth that held the Archbishop's tradition together. Because a layman who owed nothing to the Archbishop and realized there was something wrong in the church and began to study it and looked at it, he came to the same conclusion as Archbishop Lefebvre. And therefore he associated himself as a layman or as a priest with Archbishop Lefebvre because of the Archbishop's truth, not because of the Archbishop's person. And that truth is a huge factor of unity, because the truth that the priests and bishops hand down from our divine Lord Jesus Christ is the truth, the eternal truths of the Catholic faith, which go back to eternity in the bosom of the eternal Father, in the bosom of God. And that was above Jesus the man. Jesus the man could not change the eternal truth which he was handing down. The truths that Jesus deposited with his apostles, the deposit of the faith, the apostles handed down, Archbishop Lefebvre handed down. He couldn't change or invent what he was handing down. And that was the strength, that when people realized there was the truth, authority, some sort, not official authority, but a substitute authority automatically followed, the authority of truth. It wasn't the authority of Rome. It wasn't the authority coming from God through the Pope to the whole church. It wasn't that, because the Archbishop then did not have the Pope behind him. But he did have the truth. And the truth gave the society a tremendous unity. Because the Archbishop was not pushing his person. He said so. He said to his seminarians, the moment I stop telling you the truth, the moment I stop telling you what the church says, leave me, quit me. I'm not asking you to follow me. I'm trying to help you to follow the church, to follow what the church says, which is, of course, our Lord Jesus Christ and the Divine Father from eternity. And that was a huge factor of unity. Therefore, the Archbishop did not have as much authority as may have seemed to have had, but he did have a unity through truth. And that's what was his real strength. Exactly the same today. The real strength of the resistance is not any authority that it borrows from the Archbishop or that it borrows from the mainstream church. The only unity that the resistance has is what it borrows from the truth. But I mean, I know now priests in several countries, in the United States, in South America, in Europe, and there are those who belong to the resistance movement. While they fight one another sometimes, quarrel with one another sometimes, there's a tremendous unity of purpose. I'll give you an example. That's Father Ryu. Father Ryu is a capable man. He's sedevacantist, okay? That's not a truth. I don't think that's a truth. But a number of serious Catholics do think it's true that the Pope is not Pope. I don't think it is true. So that's not the point that makes unity. But there is still a considerable unity between the resistance priests and what Father Ryu writes, because he doesn't fill what is writing with the sedevacantism, But what he's writing is filled with a great deal of truth. It's not ideal because it's tainted, I would say tainted with sedevacantism, but that's another question. But what he says, he's just produced an important book on the question of the Jews. And he tells what the church has always told, down all of the ages, since the crucifixion of our Lord. The Jews are not to be hated, but they are to be fought. They're not to be hated because our Lord forbids us to hate our enemies, but they're not to be taken as our friends when for 2,000 years they've been the most serious enemies, the most serious corporate enemies that the church has had. And it's always had them, and to this day it has them. And they're not the innocent victims that their publicity gives themselves out to be. And his book has got the quotes from the church fathers, the quotes all down the ages, and the actions all down the ages. It's truth. It's history, it's doctrine, the two tied together. And that's true. That truth unites Father Rio with a number of non-sedevacantists insofar as they agree, or they accept what he and the church teaches about the Jews. It's a truth which unites. Sedevacantism doesn't unite, I have to admit that. But the resistance is remarkably united. And so when society priests or defenders of the society attack the resistance for being divided, it's not deeply divided, it's deeply united. It's superficially divided, but deeply united. Whereas the society today is superficially united by the control exercised from Williamson, which is turning into a tyrannical control. That tyranny holds together a certain unity under him, but underneath is divided. Like in Shakespeare's play, Macbeth is the tyrant of Scotland, but there's a lot of people inwardly murmuring and protesting against what Macbeth is doing. I forget the exact quote. But he has the outward obedience of people, but not the inward obedience. The society under Archbishop Lefebvre had an inward unity, an outward measure of fragility. The resistance today has an outward fragility and division between priests, but inwardly it's anybody who picks up on the permanent truth and attempts to contribute to the defense of that truth, to the defense of that faith. And they're automatically united. They may disagree on a number of things, but on the main thing, which is the survival of the faith, the so-called resistance movement is remarkably united. I run into it wherever I go. There's no organization, there's no structure, but there's something much more important, which is the truth. There should be structure and organization for Catholics, there should be. But when the source of structure, the head of the structure, is denying miracles, I mean, how can you turn to him for structure and obedience? When he is almost more mad than ever, the structural society is trying to put itself under him. These poor people have completely forgotten the Archbishop. They've completely forgotten the basic principle of the Archbishop's action, which was, truth is the purpose of authority, and when authority is seriously no longer service to the truth, authority must no longer be seriously obeyed. I will respect the people in authority, as our Lord requires us to respect those who are in the chair of Moses. Yes, I respect them, even if it doesn't always sound as though that I do, or one does. But I can't follow them. I want to save my soul. The Archbishop said, I want to die a Catholic, I don't want to die a Protestant. And again, I don't want to come in front of my Lord in my judgment and hear him say to me, did you also help to destroy the church? No. Authority is relative to truth. Catholic authority is relative to truth. There's no other organization on the face of the earth which is so dependent upon truth. Truth is its very purpose. Truth is not the purpose of the British Parliament. Oh, what a disgrace. And for many centuries, at least since Protestantism took over this country. What a disgrace. Poor things. Poor England. You and I must pray for our country, because it's heading for real trouble. It's now provoking war with Iran. What has Iran done to us? What's Iran done against England? What's Iran done to harm England? What's Iran deserved to have a war declared on it by England? The truth is, we are dancing, England is dancing to puppet masters, because England has forgotten God. It's abandoned God. England is in terrible shape. My dear friends, if you weren't here, you would not be here if you did not have the Catholic faith. God bless you. And a good deal of grace to understand where is a right place, not the only right place, but a right place to find the true religion, the true sacrifice, the true Mass, the true doctrine. You had a good deal of grace as well. And certainly not yourselves that one accuses of lack of faith. But England, oh my. Not that England is alone. French people who love France will tell you that France is in the biggest trouble of all the nations. Americans will tell you America is in the biggest trouble of all the nations. Australia can tell you that Australia is in deep trouble. It's all over. It's all over the world, because the whole world is turning its back on God. That's the key. It's not complicated. But do people today want to go back to God? It's the last thing they want. Any solution except terror. Just like in Constantinople, on the verge of Constantinople being taken over by the Turks, the Latin Church made an attempt to help. And the Constantinopolitans said, rather the Turk than the tiara. And that's exactly what they got. They got the Turk, and they refused the tiara, which is the Pope, who used to be the Pope, of course. He's now given away his tiara. Paul VI gave away his tiara in a junk shop, almost a junk shop. I mean, what was the man about? Democracy, the destruction of supremacy, the destruction of anything superior, which is ultimately the destruction of God, about liberty. And what is liberty all about? If you don't liberate yourself from God, you've still got the 10 Commandments hanging around your neck, like a chain around your neck. If you want to get rid of the 10 Commandments, you've got to get rid of God. If you want any real liberty, you've got to get rid of God. Therefore, the liberty is in fact a religion, a substitute religion, an enemy religion of the true religion. Oh my, we are not out of the woods. We are still, my dear friends, going into the woods. Have plenty of courage. You have St. Paul in today's epistle describing the difference, the distance between a Catholic living like a Catholic and somebody living in the world. I mean, you're living a new life. It's a different life. Don't be surprised if you have to live differently. If you're marching to a different drum from everybody else around you, don't be surprised. It's not surprising at all. Or don't be surprised if they make themselves your enemies, or try to mock your religion, or try to get you away from your religion, or try to... don't be surprised. You're on your way to heaven, and they're not on their way to heaven. They don't want to be on their way to heaven. But if you want to get to heaven, we have to carry our cross. We have a cross to carry, and we must carry it. Like our Lord. Our Lord showed us the way. And of course, always, to help us on our way to heaven, pray the Rosary. Obviously, always needs to be said, pray the Rosary. And turn to the Mother of God, star of the sea. When everything else is storm and tempest and darkness, the star of the sea shows the boat the way to go. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen.